Toto,
It looks different.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
It sounds different. Because for the first time, it's digitally restored and remastered in digital stereo sound.
That makes a difference.
And on the big screen everywhere. The Wizard of Oz Special Edition. You've never seen Oz like this. Rated G. Starts Friday, November 6th at a theater near you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson. Here this week, we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and we are celebrating Thanksgiving by talking about a movie that people watch every Thanksgiving. That would be The Wizard of Oz. It also comes just after Wicked has come out this past weekend. So I thought it was only fitting to end our examination of 1939 by discussing a movie that, quite frankly, is probably one of the most culturally significant and important films ever made. I don't know, again, like I said last week, I don't know that we're going to have anything new to add to the conversation, but Brian loves the colors. I love the colors. I also think Judy Garland is always worth talking about. And quite honestly, I think there are a lot of bangers in terms of songs with this movie as well. So let's get to it. Please leave a 4 or 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Give a thumbs up to the video. Brian, what can you say about The Wizard of Oz? It's 85 years old. This was a Thanksgiving tradition. It still remains a Thanksgiving tradition. It doesn't really air on, national TV. It doesn't really air on like CBS or something, but it does air on TBS and the Turner networks every single year at this point. And it is a tradition still for so many people. And it is still a story that is extremely relevant. It has been remade so many times. We've had different versions, including The Wiz, among others. We've had prequels. We've had sequels. My God, as I stated, we even had a Wicked musical, as well as the Wicked theatrical musical as well. But Brian, we are going to talk about the 1939 Wizard of Oz celebrating its 85th anniversary. Do you remember when you first saw this movie?
Yeah, I was a kid. TNT, I believe it was. I was like 8 or 9 years old. What really got to me is like the ending was kind of dark at the time for me because it seemed like everything was going to go bad for Dorothy at the end. It looked like everyone was going to get murdered. The poor scarecrow gets set on fire, and then the witch melts. So as a kid, when you watch that, they're like, wow, that's a lot of like dark stuff, man. But when I see that as a kid, it's like, wow, this is like what horror is supposed to be for kids, I guess, in that little moment. But it works because you overcome the villain, so it does work in that aspect, and you build up this witch the whole time and about her evil and wicked ways, and then all of a sudden it has this perfect crescendo of her just melting, and that of course has been parodied to death. This whole movie's been parodied to death in terms of like TV and movies and stuff, and even the soundtrack has been covered numerous times. I think Somewhere Over the Rainbow got really, really, really popular again back in 2001 when that Hawaiian singer, I forget his name, covered the song, and that's kind of like the definitive version now in terms of like, if you see like a commercial for Carnival Cruises going to Hawaii, you're going to hear that version of the song because it's Hawaiian. So yeah, I think Somewhere Over the Rainbow has become this iconic song of all time.
I'm sorry, but it's Judy Garland's song, and anybody who says otherwise, I will fight them.
Ooh, that's going to be a big debate because I don't know if you know this, but I forget his name, but that dude was like, he died right after that song came out and became like this new version of the song, and we've all heard this Hawaiian version of the song. So
like, I think it's fun. Like, it's not terrible, but I mean, to me, it is. I mean, Judy Garland singing of that song is iconic, and the fact that it is the only song in the whole movie that is sung in the non-color, I think speaks to just the added weight. And again, there's a lot of really good songs that I think the production elements really contribute, but that song is literally just Judy Garland singing, and I think that's, I mean, not only one of the best songs, it's not only the best song in the movie, but it's literally one of the biggest, most iconic song performances in any movie ever.
Absolutely. And growing up, I guess I got confused. Like, it's sepia tone in the beginning, but for some reason I just thought of it as black and white, and I don't know if it's just the quality of TVs back then and the way that maybe some TVs...
You probably memory hold it as black and white, but I always remember it's looking... It definitely looks different, and I think the idea is that it's supposed to look even more drab and boring than black and white. I think that's the vibe they're going for, and they're making a conscious choice. And I think it works out well because it really does contrast. Even I think it contrasts even more with the colors than if you just had a black and white movie.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, because just in terms of like the shock once you see all the colors is like that moment where everything kind of like flips on its ear. Yeah, visually this is like one of the most influential movies of all time in terms of like, I mean, it's not the first movie in color, right? It's not known for that. It's just the Technicolor aspects of it all.
Correct.
And the way that colors pop. We mentioned this before. Technicolor is like a whole different like kind of visual palette than the modern visual palette of colors, right? The closest thing to it, I would say, is like a Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, where they got really close to those bright popping colors that you get in a movie like this. So it's really like very unique, and that's why it stands out to this day, is because of that. And yes, we see sets, yes, we see matte paintings, but the way everything is kind of blended together, and the stylish colors and the vibrant colors just kind of blend everything together and make everything about those sets work. And even in the HD version, obviously now in 4K, we can see it's like if you stare at like the background, it's clearly a wall, right? But when you're a kid and watching it on VHS, it's like, you don't really notice that. So you can interpret, like growing up watching this movie, I've seen it kind of in three different facets, so to speak. One as a kid, and then in my teen/early 20s when I heard about, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon kind of corresponding with it. And
Oh, you went through that phase, huh?
Oh, I went through that phase for sure, considering that I'm a pothead. But like, when I've discovered that, me and my buddies got together and we kind of put some of the sequences together, and we were just blown away how there is some kind of correlation to it, but it's an accidental correlation because the members of Pink Floyd have denied it to this day that they had no influence from it, but just somehow it just kind of just correlates together in terms of layering the soundtrack with the movie. It just blends in so well in terms of like some of the lines from the songs match up with what Dorothy's doing on screen, kind of thing, and just some of the visual or the sound cues match up with the visual cues in a strange way. So yeah, if you ever want to experience it like that, I highly recommend it, because it's one of those late night things you should do. Obviously, get some weed and just go with it, man, because it's a really fun experience with the music. It is. It really is. It's a different experience. And then if you watch it as an older person, like we are now in our 30s, you see like obviously like the details, right? And it's obviously a matte painting or whatever, but your mind is able to go beyond that because you're just enjoying the visual so much. And I also recommend watching this movie with subtitles, because there's a lot of like lines in the songs that you kind of just gloss over and don't even realize what
There's a lot of incredible wordplay. I think that's the magic of the songs, is the wordplay and the way that they get so many words to rhyme with the word witch. I think that might be one of the most impressive things, and I especially noticed it on the rewatch. There's two things I noticed on the rewatch, Brian. Number one, the amount of words that rhyme with witch, really impressive. And when they're going into or trying to get to the witch, the Scarecrow has a gun. They gave the character with no brain a gun. And Brian, I'm going to bring up this phrase again. Guess what it is? Do you know what it is?
The view never changes, baby. The view never changes, daddy.
Nope. Given the person with no brain. And then they put the person with no brain in charge of Oz at the end as well. Just want to point those things out.
He was one of three in charge. He was what's the term? Oligarchy? Not a monarchy, an oligarchy where there's multiple rulers. Am I getting that right?
I'm not necessarily sure if oligarchy is the right term, but I mean, Scarecrow was going to be assisted, but he was put in charge.
Yes, so because he has the diploma now. Yeah, it's just a fun, like if you kind of look over it, it's kind of like ridiculous in terms of like, oh, we're going to give you a badge of courage. That way you know you have courage, kind of thing. It's kind of like cop-outs, right? But it's fun because as a kid, you learn that like those things are within you. They're like, if you lack courage as a kid, you realize that the courage is in you. You just got to bring it out.
And when you're in your 30s, you think that maybe the wizard is being very condescending and patronizing towards the characters too.
Or he's just a white dude that goes into a foreign land and takes over like every other fucking white dude in a foreign land, dude. Because didn't you think about that too? Like he's an outsider.
I mean, of course. I mean, that's how it works.
Oh man, so yeah, that's that older 30-year-old perspective of the movie. You got the kid's perspective, you got that 20-year-old hippie perspective, and then you got that older 30-year-old mature perspective, we're like, oh, this is really going on in the movie. But yeah, and you mentioned gaslighting. I guess that's sort of gaslighting, even though technically
There is
the
a
events
lot of gaslighting in this movie.
events in
Let me
Oz did
tell you.
not technically take place, I guess. So I don't know. But I thought it was also weird that there's a strange law where you can, um, I guess, get some authority figure to sign off on you taking someone else's dog and doing a citizen's arrest on someone else's dog because you don't like them, and then have them killed.
I mean, apparently Mrs. Dole owns half the territory, which I want that movie. I want to know how she acquired all this land. Did she get it because of a dead husband, or like how did that all work? I want to know the dynamics of this Kansas town, and we're never going to get that movie, unfortunately, because it's not nearly as friendly. But that's what I want to know, man. I want to know how Mrs. Gulch got all this land.
Yeah, and then I guess we got to mention too that she she redid the role as the Wicked Witch on Sesame Street, which scared a bunch of kids, and that episode was banned for years, which I didn't even realize or know about until I found out recently. I was just kind of like, well, that's, I don't know, man. Maybe it goes back to when I got scared as a kid and seeing her melt, and maybe that's something to it. I don't know. Just something about that part of her. Oh, what a world is very dark, even as an 8-year-old watching that. Because like, did you see? You're seeing a literal person melt to the ground. It's just like, wow. Okay, yeah, that's wow. So I think that kind of helped or contributed to that whole scary situation on Sesame Street. But that footage is now obviously available on YouTube if you want to check it out. And she kind of puts the makeup back on. She's also on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as the Wicked Witch. So I thought that was really interesting. I guess they were trying to do like a character redemption arc with her on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I'm not really evil, kids. So, there's that aspect going on too. But she does a really great job as being like this evil person. And it's like she's a Karen, obviously. And then,
is she ever a Karen?
take that mixed with the fact that her sister just got murdered on accident, what and they played Dorothy. I don't know. I guess they call Dorothy a murderer because she kills the Wicked Witch of the East.
It's more. She didn't really do a murder though. I mean, she didn't actively want the house to kill this person. It just kind of happened.
I know. That's the funny part too. Is like she's known to the bad guys as a murderer. I just always found that funny. And then the fucking Munchkins go up and we thank you for murdering the queen, or we thank you for killing the witch. And I was just
I just want to point out that anybody who talks about not celebrating death, there is literally one of the most important movies that has been made in the last 100 years. Literally has a 10-minute scene that is basically a 10-minute song dedicated to multiple characters, hundreds of extras, celebrating the fact that a person died.
Yeah, and not only that, it's like the dance moves that they were doing too. It's just like, wow, man! They did the whole dance, and they were doing
they prepared for this shit, Brian.
Yeah,
it
was like Return of the Jedi. It's like the ending of Return of the Jedi, but like just more adulation and more happiness. It's just so crazy to me every time I watch that.
It's wild. It is genuinely insane.
What I did notice this time around is like, I guess I just never noticed it before, but the way they record the audio and the singing for the Munchkins, I think it's not even them singing. I think it's regular people, and they slow the pitch or heighten the pitch up like they do with Alvin and the Chipmunks. And then I realized, like, no wonder I couldn't understand some of this stuff as a kid. And like, even when I was watching in my 20s, I could barely understand what some of the Munchkins were saying, which is why I tell you to watch this with subtitles, and you'll see the lyrics going on in these songs. And it's like, oh, I don't remember that part. I don't remember that. And then they were just like, thank you for killing the witch. And it's like, wow. So yeah, I think you got to really pay attention and put the subtitles on to see what's really, or to hear what's really going on. Because these Munchkins can be really hard to hear. But that's on purpose because they're obviously Munchkins and they had to redo the audio for them. But man, it's just kind of like, wow, there's like all this violence behind the visuals going on, And of course, the visuals are just incredible. I mean, I mentioned before, yes, there are a bunch of sets, but it just blends so well together. You know what I'm saying? And the way that they have bright green with bright blue, and then dark blues mixed with like a bright red, and the way that Scarecrow has that yellow. It's like it's not even a full yellow. It's like a harvest yellow that still pops on the screen. And I'm not a big fan of the brown colors at all, but that kind of worked because it's almost like a tan color. So for the Scarecrow, that was working, and the way they did.
I have not seen Wicked as of yet, but I am dreading comparing the use of colors in that movie compared to this because CGI just looks like sludge now, and I am really really concerned just that part of the magic of Wizard of Oz is the colors, and it feels like Wicked is going to lose that. So I'll be very curious to compare and contrast.
I'm interested too. I'm gonna see the reviews. I'm not. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters. It's still pending. We'll see, but I don't know. I'm not an Ariana Grande fan, and I don't know. I don't know. The way they're booking the witch kind of seems like they're gonna do her raw at the end. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna turn her heel when she's not really a heel.
I mean, that's kind of. I mean, if you think about it, Brian, that's the whole idea of the prequel.
Right, but then why are we celebrating her death at the beginning of the movie? So obviously she does something.
She's
bad.
not the one that dies, though. She's the not the one who dies.
Okay, she's got a bad sister.
She's the one who dies at the end of the Wizard of Oz, not the one who dies at the beginning of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I thought they were talking about that witch. Still, it doesn't matter. Like something bad is going to happen to make her turn heel, and it's not going to gel well with me because you want to be rooting for her, and then all of a sudden she's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what happened with me and Penguin. That's a whole different discussion. I went on this rant about how Penguin's a good guy.
This is the problem with just things in general.
Yeah, just reworking character traits that were not there before. So it's
Maybe
unfortunate.
we shouldn't have villains be the protagonists in movies because they're designed to be villains and not the focal point of a movie or a TV show.
I mean, it worked for Sopranos, and that's what Penguin was going for, so I get it. But in this case, like with Wicked coming up, I don't want to see her be a heel, right? It's just you're setting her up to be this baby face in the trailer, and then what are we gonna do? Just turn her heel at the end? So it's I have the same feelings about Cruella, but they kind of switched the ending on that one where she kind of becomes a good guy at the end, and she doesn't actually go off on this journey to try to kill 100 Dalmatians or whatever. So I guess you could rewrite history in terms of that as well. But yeah, like I said, this movie is all about just the visual stylings. The plot is ludicrous, obviously. But if you can get past that, it's more of like a plot for kids, and it's more about morals and lessons, which is fine. But some of the stuff visually is just crazy. And of course, what I liked about the Tin Man look is like just the fact that you can see the rust, and then as they clean him up, he just looks so shiny and great. Like, how do they do that? Because it's all makeup, and they have to redo.
Well, Brian, if you want to get into the production aspects, I mean, literally, somebody almost died because they put makeup on him, and that's why we have the actor playing the Tin Man that we do, and not somebody else. I mean, do you remember the sequence when they're running to the Land of Oz?
Oh yeah.
When they're in the poppy fields, you know what they're pouring on them, right?
Oh, you told me last week, and I was kind of shocked, but
asbestos. Literal asbestos.
Well, you want to set up first. What does asbestos do to your lungs, Jerome?
I mean, it probably gives you cancer. I'm going to assume. I don't know exactly what it does. I mean, my God, it's horrible.
Yeah, we have whole companies that just take that shit out of old houses now, right? From that era, like they did it to my house 2 months ago when they had to install the new AC. So yeah, it's fucking real, dude. And it's when I read that, I was like, no wonder so many people get sick after this movie, man. Especially the Munchkins. So, and if you read some of the stories, a lot of them got sick, and there's some curses that may or may not be around some of the actors. I don't know, but it is what it is. But yeah, I always
there's literally a Munchkin that hung himself. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that. That seems kind of like a stretch, but I've seen what the scene is referring to, and there's something hanging on a train. It's just a rope or something, and people just got things out of the ordinary and just exacerbate it. But in terms of the character design, I really like the Tin Man the most. But growing up, I did think Scarecrow was played by Dick Van Dyke, and of course, mathematically now that's impossible for that to happen. But he just looks like Dick Van Dyke, the Scarecrow. Ray Bolger is his name, but he looks like.
I think his performance is the best. I think sometimes the Lion goes a little too big. I think the Tin Man goes a little too whiny, but I think the Scarecrow is the most perfectly calibrated of those three performances. I mean, to me, Judy Garland is the clear standout, followed very, very closely by Margaret Hamilton as the witch. I think, for me, those are the two best performances in the movie, and I think they're the ones that really stand out. But in terms of the three other characters, I think the Scarecrow is the strongest.
For sure, and like I said, the character designs are really well done, and the thing about the Carity line is that I don't know. I just always found him annoying. I like the way that I get why the guy portrays him that way, and he's kind of like, very loosey about it. Like he's, a sissy a little bit, but that's the whole point of it. But I just found him annoying. I don't know what it is, but I like it when he's in regular form. He's a good actor in regular form at the beginning, but the line always just annoyed me as a kid, even to this day. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
It feels like it's a little too. The performance ultimately feels like it ends up a little too broad.
And then I feel like they waste, was it 5 minutes on him on that song where he's pretending to be king, what he would do as a king.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think this movie is generally, that is the one song that I would probably have deleted.
And then because if you cut that, they're right already to the Wizard, and that cuts 5 minutes out of the movie, and it goes from an hour and 40 to about an hour and 35, which is fine, But I think that was the one thing I would have just cut. Other than that, I think that we mentioned the visuals, the music is great. I think as a kid, this is like the perfect kind of movie to introduce a kid to like movies in general, because it kind of has that. You seeing old movies the way they were before, and then the color comes in, and then obviously the child is like, oh my God, look at all these bright colors, and that's what we did as kids. So I think the colors are so important to this movie; it's unbelievable. And Judy Garland, man, she does a great job, obviously, and it's unfortunate that I think from what I've heard and read, is that she got like a lot of like, not physical abuse, but the idea of like work abuse in terms of overworking your actors and pushing them.
They gave her various pills, and they tried to, not only for sleep, for getting up, and then for ultimately losing weight. And it's just, it's absolutely child abuse. And if you watch any documentary, or if you even watch the Judy Garland movie that came out a few years ago, it's fucking child abuse, man.
Straight up, yeah. So that's the dark part of this movie. Like, there is some dark elements that are not in the movie itself. It's just the production, the stuff they put in, the asbestos snow, all that shit. I mean, look, it's in the 39. They didn't know any better, I guess. But then, again, looking back, it's like, how did they pull this off? And it's like, obviously they did the work.
Yeah.
They did the work, and they did the real work, and it's not like CGI where you can just kind of sit back. And I think that's where your concern is that CGI doesn't necessarily pop colors well. Some movies did.
Yeah, I think so. I think it works. I think with some Pixar and Disney movies, I think it's worked out really well. But I just think that when it comes to live action, I think there's just something about it that it all kind of comes together and becomes like a gray mass. And if there's not proper care taken into it, I can think of a bunch of Marvel movies that's the case. And it's a mixed bag for sure.
And we also got to point out, this is one of the most parodied movies of all time, like so many pop culture references. I distinctly remember the Family Guy one where they do this thing where it's like they cut to the line where Dorothy goes to the Scarecrow and goes, I think I'm gonna miss you most of all, and then fucking Tin Man and Lion are just staring at her like, bitch, what the hell did you just say? We're standing right here, how could you say that, kind of thing. And it's just like, yeah, she said that. And it was really funny. Yep. When you watch it in context now, it's like, dude, she said that right in front of the other two. How do you think those other two guys feel when she says that to Scarecrow? So just the little things like that, and they make fun of, and the fact that the idea of like this, the great and powerful Oz is really just this dude behind the curtain. I mean, that was literally done in the Loki series, obviously, as like a reference to that, and probably other things I'm not even thinking of right now. But it's this idea the man behind the curtain is the real Oz kind of thing, and that Oz is not even a real person kind of thing. So that trope definitely comes from this, and I think that's one of those things about this legacy of this movie, is that some of those tropes are just timeless, and this idea of like someone behind the curtain, that's kind of relevant to this day. And I think people with like conspiracy theories latch onto that concept and can take it too far of who's really behind the curtain. But in terms of that, you can take that metaphor and kind of stretch it out to almost anything, dubious behind the scenes stuff, and just attribute it to the Wizard of Oz. So there you go.
Absolutely. So anything else to say about the Wizard of Oz? Again, this is an iconic movie that it just feels like we could go on, but there's also the element of like, what else is there to say about this movie too? I think it's incredibly well done. I mean, this is a 10 out of 10 for me. This was on my 100 favorite movies. It will continue to be a movie that I watch pretty frequently every year. It's an easy watch, hour and 42 minutes. It's just extremely well done, well executed, great performances. even the movie, even some of the flaws can't bring me down totally. I really love this movie.
The one thing I did want to mention that I forgot is the in the beginning when we see the Twister and sepia tone. Every time I see that, I just kept helping thinking like, is there a green screen there and they layered the secondary footage on there, or like how did, because it's moving, like it's literally moving in the background, because it, when you see it moving in the background, you know it's not a matte painting because it's moving. So I'm like, how in the world did they do this with this one shot they hit? It's like a 5 second shot of just the tornado and like the old woman in the foreground, and every time I watch that, I'm just like, how in the hell did they do that? Like, I don't know, because there's ways of making tornadoes in like jars with water and soap. You know that trick where you just kind of shake it around? And it's obviously they did something like that, but they layered it onto the footage, and it just looks like a real tornado. And you can't help but think like, this tornado looks more realistic than some of the tornadoes we saw in Twisters, right? Like I feel like that's true, right? Am I the only one that feels that way? Because like it was all CGI in Twisters, but
No, I can see that. I can
it just
absolutely
looks
see
so
that.
real. It looks so real. So that's, I've always wanted to like point that out, like how the
I mean,
tornado
I think that's a
so
huge.
good.
I think that's a huge positive. I think that again, the fact that it feels real. I mean, to me, that's what you want. You want the movie to feel real, and I think that the part of the magic is that even when the movie isn't totally real, it feels very homegrown and it feels like tangible. And I think the part of the issue with CGI is that it doesn't feel tangible, and that's where you kind of lose people. But I digress. Brian, we are done with 1939. There are so many 1939 movies that we could have discussed, but we wanted to do just the 1 month and really hone in on some of the movies that we felt were really important. But Brian, we are going to be transitioning into the month of December. We have some very special plans for it. We're not going to reveal all of them, but we are going to talk about next week. Brian, this is all you. Literally the wrestling match selection and the movie. So I'm going to let you describe what we are doing for next week's podcast.
So I would say once a year I watch Airplane, and every time I watch Airplane, I always go into that rabbit hole of like other disaster movies that influenced it, and Airplane, 747, all those other shits. And then you come to the Towering Inferno, and every time I go on, I was like, I've never seen this. I've seen people review it on YouTube, and it's this star-studded cast, and there's all these egos and all this background stuff. And if you look at the poster, there's a reason why, like, Steve McQueen and Paul Newman are on equal footing on the poster, because they have to be equal in everything in the movie. So there's all these little things about this casting, and like the fact that like you got Faye Dunaway and William Holden and all these people, and it's like a giant set on fire, basically. And I was just like, you know what? I want to watch this one day. And I just talked to Jerome about it, and he's interested in watching it. So we kind of put this together. And then we decided, like, if we do it, we're not going to do a whole disaster movie month, but we want to pair it with some kind of wrestling match for the right match. And of course, I thought of the Tower of Doom, not from '88, but from 1996. And of course, that's just inflated egos all over the place. Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ric Flair. It just fits this kind of concept as well, of like an all-star cast. And other things as well, like the fact that Brian Pillman they wanted Brian Pillman in the match, and we'll get into that as well, and why Brian Pillman was even wanted to be in the match, or he didn't want to be in the match because he was just going to get pinned by Hogan. So there's all these different things about Hogan's ego, and the fact that you got all these egos in Towering Inferno. So I'm looking forward to it, and I've never seen it before, and I'm really looking forward to it because this movie is like known for its legendary set design and the way that they shot this movie and the cast. And the fact that O.J. Simpson is in it. There's a lot of things going on, man. A lot of things going on. But it's going to be a fun watch. And we're going to talk about the Uncensored 96 match as well, and how that came about, and how Kevin Sullivan was just trying to please Hulk Hogan's ego.
For sure. Anything else, Brian, before we head on out of here?
9 out of 10 Wizard of Oz for me. That's my final rating. It's always been around there. It's never been the perfect movie for me, but it's always been like this great visual spectacle that you always want to enjoy every once in a while. And if in terms of Thanksgiving, it's this. Now it's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles as well. Maybe the '89 Survivor Series, and maybe some old school TV episodes of Thanksgiving.
All right. For Brian, I am Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.